Hi, everyone, and welcome to Kering's Women in Motion Conversations. Oh, not yet, okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the final edition of the Kering Women in Motion Conversations. We are here. Tomorrow is the final day of the Cannes Film Festival and the award ceremony, and I'm thrilled to be here. My name is Minori Ravindran, and I'm international editor for Variety. We are here actually with a truly inspiring guest, Emily Yang. Emily Yang is a former visual graphics designer turned multidisciplinary artist and NFT virtuoso. She's here to tell us about the arts in the digital age, Web3, and the decentralized financing landscape, and how women and women of color are leading in these spaces. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Thank you for being here. Should I sit down? Okay. Everyone, I'm sure you know this, but there's room at the end for questions as well. So if you, just to say, it's like awkwardly sitting here. welcome.
Hello.
Very nice to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here with us.
1 minute photo, guys.
Oh.
In the meantime, please turn off your mobile or put them on silent. We highly appreciate it. Thank you.
Wait.
1 minute photo.
Wait.
Emily, please, just here.
Yeah, please. Yeah, okay. And Emily, just at the back here, please. Thank you. Nice and small. Just wait.
Just one more here from you, please.
And here, please.
Ready?
Okay. And just about Emily. Emily. Please.
Ready, guys? And we're good.
Thank you.
Amazing. So welcome to Cannes. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing great, actually.
I've been really interested in speaking with you just because I know how huge People Pleaser is online and everything that you're doing. But you've had a really interesting trajectory, I feel like, because you began your career as basically a visual graphics designer for big studio movies. So how did you sort of like begin at that place?
Well, pretty much what happened was I've loved art and drawing since a young age, but when I was in university, I watched Wall-E for the first time, and I just thought, I was so moved by the movie that when I watched the credits and I saw all those names in the credits who had worked on it from a technical perspective, I thought, oh, I want to be one of those names. And then so I sort of went into this deep dive of looking into how to make animation and computer graphics, and then I sought a career in it afterwards. Yeah.
That's very, very cool. And I know that you had a big job lined up at Apple, effectively, and then when the pandemic struck, that was sort of put on ice, obviously, because of the COVID crisis. How did you pivot? Because ultimately, you sort of bet on yourself, right, when that happened?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely not an easy time. Looking back now, I obviously see it as a blessing in disguise, but at the time, it was particularly stressful because I was living in New York and I was worried about paying rent. I was actually collecting unemployment insurance because I had lost my job, and sort of what kept me sane during that time was I started an Instagram account, and that's how People Pleaser was born. Was because I wanted an outlet just to make art because I was doing endless job interviews and applications at the time, and I was actually unemployed for more than a year. So I was applying to jobs for more than a year, and it was obviously really hard time to get a job because competition was so high and the global economy was unsure because of COVID. And so to make myself feel more productive during this time, because I had been working nonstop since I graduated all the way up until that point, and not having a job made me feel like I didn't know what to do with myself or that I didn't have a sense of purpose. And so I made that Instagram account to have an outlet so that I would start making artwork for myself for the very first time, because before I had always been making artwork for other big Hollywood studios and such. And it was really just to make myself feel like I was doing something productive and I wasn't putting my life to waste. Around that same time, I started looking into other ways of generating income because of a lack of a job. And then later in 2020, that summer, I had discovered DeFi, which stands for decentralized finance, which is a subsector of cryptocurrency. And I saw a way to sort of marry my own skill set with crypto knowledge and make myself sort of valuable and useful in the space out of purely a need to make some kind of income for myself. And so, yeah, I started using my medium and making all these animations to promote DeFi protocols. And then through word of mouth, I think one after another, they all started hitting me up. And then that's when I was like, this could be a real job.
Yeah, there could be something here.
Yeah.
And I feel like digitally, most people in the online world, people know you as People Pleaser, which is a really fun handle, I think. How did you sort of land on People Pleaser?
It really was one of those things where when I made the Instagram account, I was looking at all these other amazing digital artists who all had really cool artist names, and my actual name is not particularly interesting or unique. And so I thought, okay, I should probably also have a cool artist name. And I think it very much resonates with just my personality type, being a people pleaser. And so it was one of those things where my hand was already on the screen, and I just typed it, and I thought, honestly, I wasn't in love with it, and I said, I can always change it later. And then everything happened so fast. Now I don't have time to change. I can't change it anymore. It kind of just stuck. But yeah, thankfully other people like it. So
I feel like people relate to it and they can understand it. It's a very human sort of.
It was not intentional, but I'm very lucky.
And how did you kind of go about expanding your art and what you do into the NFT world and sort of into this arena, because it's it's a very different sort of ballgame, isn't it?
It is. I think a lot of people see it as either, oh, it's super ridiculous, or it's all over the top, like very over the top, or the media focuses a lot on sort of just numbers being generated. To me, I found obviously the technology is very interesting about being able to generate on-chain royalties for artists. Beyond the many things that NFTs sort of enable for people, but. It's really weird because I feel like as an NFT artist, your entire income and worth and self-worth is put online. Everybody's judging you by the numbers that you generate, and it is actually a lot of high stress. But it also at the same time is a very interesting and new field that people are just looking into. And for me, when I started doing the DeFi animations in 2020, I had also obviously discovered NFTs in tandem, and then I would mint a few here and there, but they were fairly cheap and sometimes wouldn't sell just because at the time I didn't have a huge following. So me entering the NFT space was a pretty intentional step actually. So in early 2021, that was when Nifty Gateway started becoming really big, and then all the big celebrities like The Weeknd and Grimes and all these people started dropping NFTs on Nifty Gateway, and then I sort of realized that there's this giant tsunami wave of interest from the mainstream that are coming towards NFTs. And I sort of was wondering, how can I position myself to also be a part of this wave? And so that's when sort of I was experimenting around, and then I did the first, I had never done an auction up to that date, and I feel like the interesting thing about auctions is it sort of lets the market decide what the price is. And so this was definitely during the peak sort of interest of NFTs, as well as I recognized that I had this opportunity because from my DeFi career, I had already garnered a community of fans who are crypto native and willing to spend cryptocurrency. Because just because you're a celebrity doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to do well in NFTs, because your millions of followers probably don't even transact in cryptocurrency, right? So I definitely had a little bit of an advantage there, is that my fan base was already crypto native, and I just saw an opportunity, and I describe it as having like a baseball bat ready, and I was watching the ball drop and wondering when I would hit it, and thankfully I hit a home run.
I think you did, and it's amazing that it's all been so recent, because this is like the last 2 and a bit years, right?
Yeah, I think that's a result of the space itself being so fast moving. We call it crypto time dilation, where 1 month in crypto feels like 6 months of real life events. The industry is ever changing, always moving really fast.
I can well imagine, but I still feel like there is still some confusion in terms of what NFTs are. I feel like it's still a little bit opaque in terms of audiences and just the public like not really having a grasp of. Is that fair to say?
Definitely,
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of, well, I think it means a few things. One is that we're still early, but also I think builders and people, for example, like Silicon Valley, I think probably when Web 2.0 products like Facebook and Instagram first came out, people didn't understand it right away either. And so hopefully, that's part of my job, or what I'm doing here is to help digest it a little bit with the mainstream, and with at least my art or my platform. I also try to make the content a little bit more fun. It's definitely what I was doing with DeFi, is DeFi has a lot of really complex and just not immediately intuitive concepts, and then so I would sort of take those and study the white papers, and then I would come up with really sort of memey and relatable ways using art to kind of regurgitate that back for an audience so that it's they can understand it better.
Got it. And just for our audience here as well, like people who might not necessarily have a grasp of it, how would you describe NFTs and Web3 and how it sort of sits within this wider space?
So Web3 is pretty much just the whole internet that's being sort of operated and orchestrated and built and owned by the people who are using it and building on it, and orchestrated via tokens, so an NFT is a type of token. Cryptocurrency itself, so Bitcoin, Ethereum, are also, they're all tokens, right, that are, and then they all use the blockchain to store information. And I think the concept of NFTs, I think this also depends on what generation you're from, but I like to talk about Neopets, if anybody has ever played that before.
Yes.
It's a pretty straightforward, I think as kids, through Neopets, we understood the concept of digital ownership and
Very
the
true.
value of various digital goods. It's the same as any other video game, really. For example, in video games, they might have like in Neopets, they have different omelets, right? And then there's certain types of omelets that are more rare and expensive, and then there's like the plain ones that are free or very cheap. And NFTs are really sort of the same thing. And if you live quite a nomadic lifestyle like mine right now, moving around so much, you actually realize I don't want so many physical things anymore, and having an NFT really sort of kind of helps that lifestyle as well. So, I think it's a combination of COVID also accelerating this process. During COVID, I spent a lot of time indoors. I didn't really play video games before, but when it was the pandemic, I had nothing to do but to sit at home, and then so that's how I really discovered games on the Nintendo Switch, or sort of VR or metaverse games online, and I realized, oh, there's this whole other digital world that I wasn't even a part of. And hopefully, I hope that we're not going to a future where everyone just stays indoors all the time, but it definitely is something that we can't deny that is coming. More and more, everybody, I think, spends most of their time online or on digital devices these days. And so it's something that we should all at least strive to understand better.
Of course. And why has art been sort of leveraged in this way? Because it feels as though this arena is really associated so closely with the art world, which is really interesting and cool. And obviously you've really kind of taken advantage of that. Like how, what's the link there?
I think art is just easier for people to understand because it's a very visual medium. So even right now, when you're talking about the concept of a music NFT, I think people can't feel like they can't execute unless there's an album art that goes with it. And I think it's just because humans are such visual creatures. So if we don't have when you think about a digital file, if there's nothing to look at, it's not a video, then I think it sort of relates with people less. And that's probably why art sort of took off first. But just like the internet or that we have MP3 files right now, I think as sort of more and more this NFT technology is integrated with our daily lives, people will move away from the art aspect of it and realize that it can be used for many other things, like the obvious one being tickets or documentation, like driver's licenses. So.
That's really interesting. And what about the gender balance? Obviously, this is the Kering Women in Motion talk, and this is a very, strong platform for this particular conversation. But in terms of the gender balance within the field, and also ethnic diversity, what is your take on how much representation I suppose there is right now?
I think that the crypto community itself is not a sexist one. You can this is pretty obvious by how many anonymous influencer accounts there are, by people just being represented by a picture of a monkey online or something. They don't know who you are, what your background is, what you look like. It doesn't really matter. It's just what kind of thoughts and ideas you're putting out into the space. And there's definitely a gender disparity though, but I think that's a spillover from the tech industry being more male-oriented, as well as people who are, I guess, more interested in sort of like finance, like traditional finance also is, there's it's basically a convergence of all these industries that I think previously had a large gender imbalance.
Right.
And my job is to hopefully inspire more women to join the space, and you are seeing this happen more and more. And I think sort of my own success is also a result of people not being genderly discriminating, because I think they just recognized that the work that I was doing was cool and much less about who I am or what I look like. So in that regard, I feel really lucky, and I hope that my story can inspire other women to join in my footsteps in building in Web3 as well.
Of course, of course. What about in the wider art world, would you say?
I definitely noticed there's a so, I don't come from a traditionally art background, right? My first sort of exposure to the art space was from entering NFTs, but I definitely noticed that even in traditional art, the top selling artists are typically male. And so I'm not really sure if it's because there's a gender discrimination there. I'm sure, there's some relationship there, but I hope that with everybody digitizing themselves, it will matter less and less who you are or what you look like.
Got it. And how have you personally kind of gone about bringing more women into the field?
Well, I love doing panels like this that are women focused, and obviously, recently, this is more film related as well, but with I did a partnership with Brute and Cans to create NFTs that help. We're working with Dr. Stacy Smith for the USC Annenberg Inclusion Initiative, and so with the funds that we gathered from selling those NFTs, we are issuing scholarships to aspiring female filmmakers or female film students, and I guess the rest is just preaching the gospel to girls.
Very, very cool. And just in general, would you say is enough being done to bring women into? Obviously you are clearly sort of doing your part, but just in the broader landscape, what are some of the initiatives in place, and is it enough?
We could definitely use more. We can always use more. We're trying to move away from a societal, systemic impact that has been around for, probably like a century at least, right? And so, it's not going to change overnight. But I am seeing way more and more effort being put into sort of educating women or just being more inclusive towards women, which is really inspiring and makes me more optimistic about every space in general. And I think the rest of it is just, I'm seeing so many amazing communities online, even with crypto, where they're making it very girl-friendly and, sort of pulling screenshots from like chick flick movies that we like, but then educating, crypto in that way, which I think is really fun and cool. Boys Club is a good example of this. And so, I highly encourage girls to check that out so that it makes it more fun and interesting.
Very cool. And this partnership with Brute, and I believe actually you've been collaborating with them, but then also as you were saying, the USC Annenberg Inclusion Initiative. What are some of the fruits of your labor out of Cannes, would you say?
Well, I think first, Brute is just a really amazing partner to have worked with. They've been so supportive and so resourceful, and it's super early, so hopefully this is just the beginning of an ongoing partnership, and we're excited to hopefully by the time next year Cannes rolls around, that we'll actually have some kind of activation for the females that did receive the scholarships, so we'll see how that goes.
That's very cool. And I feel like a lot more is being done within the NFT space, within film in general, and the industry. It seems as though there's still a little bit of confusion, but people are still trying to leverage the space a little bit more, especially in places like documentary and whatnot.
Yes.
How have you sort of seen it in action? I know you've only been here a short time, but do you get that sense here in Cannes as well?
I definitely see people talking about it, and I think it's sort of. That's probably where the next wave of NFTs is going, is media and IP and longer form content. Including myself, I've been quite interested in this as well. Last summer, I used NFTs to crowdfund the Ethereum documentary, and we raised over $2 million within 48 hours. So within 2 days, the documentary was fully funded, and is now, almost a year later, it's already have been shot, and well into production. And this sort of gave me new ideas about how we can use crowdfunding via crypto, because it's efficient as a resource for filmmakers. And this is something that I would love to hear more about filmmakers talk about, because I think a lot of people have this sort of maybe idea that as an NFT, like a movie needs to be an NFT or something, but I don't feel that that's the way that we should go, because you're not going to sell a one-of-one NFT of a movie for like $5 million to one person. That just doesn't make any sense, right? So it's sort of pushing us to think more about how we can use NFTs as utilities to facilitate the making of movies, which is something that I'm looking into and working on personally as well.
Got it. Here in Canada as well, just in terms of women and their place within the festival and their place within the film industry at large has been a real topic of conversation. There have been various incidents, and that's really put that conversation into sharp relief. What are your views? And obviously, as an artist, albeit working within the digital space, but kind of when you're kind of looking at cinema right now, how do you sort of perceive its progress for women?
I think it's slow, but there is progress, and hopefully, through events and missions like this, we can accelerate it a little bit more. I definitely still feel like there, especially film compared to I would say even tech and other industries. Right now, it's still very, very much behind in terms of inclusivity of women, especially in sort of female directors or filmmakers. And so obviously, that's part of what we're hoping to change with the USC Annenberg Inclusion Initiative as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, they've been really at the forefront of doing a lot of that work.
Yeah, it's super inspiring.
I think actually we've got a social media question here for you that I will let's see here. Okay, so we have a question from Emma from Instagram for you. Jeff Koons is just one of the artists from more traditional forms of creation who just created his first NFT, which he donated to the Amphar Gala, which actually happened last night. Do you think different artists can naturally move to this new space? And how are you?
Yeah, I think any artist can move towards this space as long as they study up on the material and understand the technology. The space is very, very sensitive towards anything that could come off as a cash grab, because I think the media probably isn't helping in that all they do is report about how much this NFT has sold for several $1 million, and then so it's drawn a lot of unwanted attention in terms of people who might be greedy or in the space for the wrong reasons, for monetary reasons. Of course, there's a lot of monetary upside, but I think that generally you see people who sort of make a transition into this space that are doing well are the people who have done their homework to really understand why this technology could be revolutionary and not just the financial upside of it.
Got it. It needs to feel organic and
authenticity is key.
Exactly. I'm going to throw to the audience in case anybody has any questions for Emily as well. Do we have any?
Yeah.
Okay, we've got one question here.
Who's on mic?
Oh, I think we have a mic actually coming to you just because we're recording. Thank you.
Hi, hello. So you just mentioned earlier that this auction, I would like to know who did win the auction, if it's possible to know. You were mentioning the auction you were doing, and how are Charlie Shrem, Tom Melley, and Courtney Warner involved in Define?
Sorry, do you mean the auction that is associated with Brut and Cannes, or?
Yeah.
Oh, it's still ongoing, but part of the utility of the NFTs, which is really cool, is that it helps activate attending a red carpet or a movie premiere at Cannes. So, if you bought it now, it would just be sort of more of a commemorative, because Cannes just, it's almost ending now. But, I'm sure if people are interested, they can head to, it's just, maybe we can include a link later. It's like shibuya.xyz.
Of course.
Yeah, we will include a link later if people are interested in looking at the NFTs or where they're selling. Yeah. And sorry, what's the second?
How is Charlie Shrem involved in this, and Courtney Warner and Tom Melley?
I don't know.
Because I got an invitation earlier from them for an event. It was Define.
Are you talking about the Amphar?
No, I'm not talking about
Oh.
that. Well, I can maybe explain later on.
Okay.
Because I got it's interesting that it's also.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know who those people are, so.
They work in the cryptocurrency work.
Oh, okay, got it.
Okay. Do we have any other questions at all? Oh, we've got one question here.
Thank you. Thank you for the conversation. I have a question regarding the gender equity and the discrimination that you talked about. You said that obviously there are not that much discrimination because you're here, obviously, and you're succeeded in that very, very difficult sector of crypto and in the art that you are succeeding in. So the question is regarding more your female touch, because you mentioned also the scholarship. So what is the specific female touch that you're adding in your art and that you would convey to the as a message to the youngsters, to the young girls? Thanks.
Well, it's interesting because early on I had a conversation with somebody who was interested in just like my art profile, and then they were mentioning to me, which I had not noticed before, that, oh, just by looking at your art alone, I could tell that you're a female. And then so, I found that very interesting, and I asked why that is. And apparently it's, I guess, obviously there's so many just natural differences between men and women, but the way that we use lines or colors, there's just something that's a little bit more of a feminine touch, which I feel is harder to describe with words. But for sure, I think when people see my art, it's a little bit more feminine, I think. And that's what makes it fun and keeps things a little bit more diverse in the space as well.
It's like what you were saying before, isn't it? It's easy to sort of hide behind that digital sort of, I guess, like mask, but ultimately the work that you produce does it has that lens of empowerment for women, right?
At the end of the day, it's a little bit of an expression of yourself, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I believe that we will wrap it up here. But thank you so much, Emily, for being with us, and congratulations on your Cannes debut.
Thank you.
And thank you to Kering as well for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.